Money coaching is a marathon, not a sprint. One, see where you're spending money. Then the money that you can save into the emergency fund. It's very important, it's crucial. The third aspect, see which money you can save, invest, but I wouldn't leave out, I call it the happy money fund.
Luca, you are a money coach, which is a very interesting role to undertake, especially in today's world with all the financial pressures that both single people and families attend. So tell us a bit, before we get into the money coaching aspect, tell us a bit about yourself. Where did you come from and how did you end up becoming a money coach?
I think it's very important to start with your own personal story. And really and truly, it started back when I was 10 years old. I used to look at my dad. He used to earn quite a good salary, but he never managed to save money. So it was always paycheck to paycheck. And although I was 10 years old, I used to notice other people working the same kind of jobs, but they still managed to save money, it seemed, and go on holidays and do more things than we did. It doesn't mean that we lacked anything. We still lived a good life, me and my siblings. But when I was 10, I asked that question: why is my dad living paycheck to paycheck and other people doing the same job, living more comfortably? Then, as you know, it's not something that you discuss within a family. You know, money is a taboo, and it's not discussed with children, unfortunately, and that's something not just in Malta but also internationally. So I thought I won't ask more questions about it, also not to make my parents feel uncomfortable. But then when I was 18, my dad lost his job, and since he didn't save anything, we were in for quite a hard time, and we found no help. So my parents had to sell their most precious objects at home just to keep us getting by. And when you experience that hardship, it makes an effect on you. And I said, I don't want this type of thing to happen ever again to my future family. But then I took it a step further as well. And I said, listen, I want to help my community as well. And I started learning about personal finances. I discovered the world of investing, the world of financial literacy. It was such a vast world that I was taken by surprise. And it took me 15 years not to learn everything, because you always learn something new. But then after 15 years, where I also did a master's degree in finance and investing, I said, how can I help personally, a person personally, not just behind, in an office space and being an investment advisor. I wanted a more personal experience with my clients. And that's where money coaching came along. And I started the money coaching course last year. I became a certified money coach. And this January I started the money coaching hub. And I thought that it's going to be a slow process until, I got some clients and I got some influence in the market. But to my surprise, it became quite in demand. And I've had countless clients, half foreign, half Maltese, all concerned about their personal finances, but not just personal finances from a practical point of view, also personal finances from a psychological point of view. And when I say psychological point of view, I go into your money story, your money personality. So what kind of person are you around money? Are you an anxious person? Or do you feel confident when it comes to money? They are all things which form our money habits as well. And money habits and the psychology of money really and truly is the basis of our personal finances. Once we are in control of the psychological aspect of money, I believe we have a good base for the practical aspect of money. And when I say practical aspect, is the emergency fund aspect, the savings aspect, etc., etc.
I've noticed that now that you're talking about it, that a lot of people view money differently. I know people that are very obsessive about how much money they have in their account. And many people like myself who don't really value money that much, which is why I'm an impulse buyer, for example. And I struggle to save unless I make a really genuine conscious effort every day. So that's very interesting. But if we look at your first point, which you said money is a taboo and it's not discussed, both Malta and internationally. Let's dig into that, because that's super interesting. Why do you think money is a taboo and it's not discussed? So why do people tend to, for example, not to disclose their salary? So I do it. Like, for example, when I'm talking with friends and colleagues, well, not colleagues because we can't do it nowadays, but even with previous colleagues and friends, like, I don't shy away from, because again, for me, money is not a big deal. Like, I don't care. But if they ask me, I'm going to say, I'm going to try and run around that question. But why is it for some people difficult to talk about money and consider it like there's a stigma behind it?
Yeah, I think it has to do a lot with money shame, in the sense that, let's say, for example, you are a lawyer and you look successful from the outside. And maybe you are earning a good salary because you have a good company, whatever. And maybe you drive a nice Mercedes or any other luxury car, whatever. But it might be that you're facing money problems yourself. Maybe you're earning a good salary, but you're spending it very quickly and you're getting into debt, etc. But it's very difficult for you to speak out. Why? Because you have a reputation to protect. And this is not just the case with lawyers and with professionals, but let's take the parents, for example. So imagine they have a hard time with money. How are they going to tell their children about it? There's the reputation of a parent, to protect their child from such problems. So there's a tendency that to protect our children, we don't speak about these issues. But then what would happen is that our children will grow up and then they have to face such challenges themselves without having pre-knowledge that they could have got when they were younger. So we are not really and truly preparing our young generation for the future. What's happening now? Once they are out of university, they start facing the money challenges by trial and error because they don't have prior experience, and as you know, there is no financial literacy subjects at school.
Unfortunately,
yes, and this is not just in Malta but also anywhere in the world. And then once you have faced these challenges, it becomes more and more difficult for you to speak about money because it's all connected to money shame. It's all connected to tarnishing your reputation. And if you have a good reputation as a successful lawyer or as a successful graduate, etc., if money is your weakness, you tend to hide it. And unfortunately, this money shame is getting people into then suffering from depression, for example, and in some cases, some people even to suicides related to these issues as well. Yeah, so it's quite problematic.
So how would you start from an early age training your children and to become good or become financial literate? Let's use that word. Like how would you start training them from an early age and then into their teens and late teens and eventually obviously when they become young adults?
Yes, so
how would you guide them?
With children, it's a little bit subjective because it really depends on the child. But with young children, some games, would immediately help. So when the child is a little bit of a grown-up, board games like Monopoly, for example, to give your son, your daughter an idea of what the financial world is all about. Okay, Monopoly, there's a lot of luck in it as well, but
so
at least... sorry?
Even in life?
So. Yeah, exactly. But at least you're buying and selling, and the fact that you're into this game of buying and selling, you're already having an idea what it means to buy a home and rent it out. And for example, until I discovered that buying and renting, what it means, it took me until 25 years old to discover that world. Why? Because my parents, they are normal working class parents, and all I was exposed to was the working class life. I didn't know anything about the business life. And I discovered the business life through my research and also through friends that I have. So exposing your child to such board games would definitely help, and your child would most probably enjoy such games. Of course, there is then how to use the pocket money, if you're saving some of it or not. So you introduce the concept of saving from an early age. That would most definitely help out. And as the child grows older, so maybe in his or her teenage years, why not start also some education about the investing world, what it means to invest in a stock, a bond, etc. Because the more financial literacy there is from a young age, the better chance your child would have to start investing from an early age and get into more chance to make the most of the miracle of compound interest. I am 33 years old, and I think I started investing quite late compared to what I could have done in my late teens. So if I had started investing when I was 16, 17, even just 50 euro, 100 euro a month, I would have gained lots of years investing in the stock market. And we know that the stock market in the past 90 years, it increased between 8 to 10% a year. I am referring, of course, to the S&P 500. And this knowledge is not widespread. And as Maltese, we like when we invest, there's a tendency of investing just in bonds and in these conservative
the S&P 500 is it's very unknown as well. It's a bit known in our generation now, because it doesn't take much to really find out what the S&P 500 is and how a money market stock or whatever an investment is shared between them, so minimizing risk, etc., and all that stuff. And I think it's only become popular or known in the last few years within our generation, I think, because I speak to my parents about it and they're like, no, that's risky. Like, it's not. It's riskier to leave your money in your bank account, I think, in terms of savings, because you're losing money.
Yeah, if you consider inflation.
Exactly.
If you consider inflation, yeah. But I don't blame your parents or anyone for thinking that, because that's lack of financial knowledge, and also you have to consider that years ago it was much harder to invest. Nowadays we have lots of apps, and through fractional investing, it's easier to buy a particular stock now, so it's become easier, but at the same time harder, because we have more choice. And the tendency is that when you have more choice, you tend to do more mistakes. And if a person starts investing, for example, and he immediately does a mistake and loses, 10-20% of his portfolio, there's a tendency that, listen, I took my chances, now I'm out of investing and I won't invest anymore.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, this happened to my dad, because I know that I told you that he never saved money, but back in the 1990s, early 1990s, there were these Argentinian junk bonds, and he was one of the many who invested quite a substantial sum in an Argentinian bond after an advice given by a financial advisor at the time, and he lost a large percentage of his money there. So I think he told me he lost between 30 to 50% of his initial investment. And that kept him back from the investment world. And unfortunately, I think we are also at an age where we have to be very careful what we believe in. So we don't just take any advice. Let's get educated first, because when you have education backing you up, you make less mistakes, and you have long term it will benefit you. And that's what I'm trying to do, educating.
And the long game is diversification, I think, as well, right? So you don't put all your eggs in one basket, I think, which is, I've seen that. So I know you can't obviously say, yes, that's definitely the case, because it's not the case for every type of investment.
Yeah.
But like a lot of the books I read and a lot of the videos I saw and guides and all that say, like, make sure you diversify if you're playing the long game. I mean, there are probably cash grabs, as in you can quickly change money if you are really watching the stock market and you know that there's going to be a company that's going to blow up or whatever, which people do. Like, they benefit from, like, wars and stuff like that. They know when to put money where. But no, so you're right. Like, if you get bitten, you kind of don't want to invest anymore. And I think that's... it's down to the individual on how much risk they want to take, I guess.
Yeah, there's lots of psychology in it as well, because I don't blame a person saying, listen, I have 30,000, let's invest it all in the S&P 500, for example. And maybe when he invests it 2 weeks later, I don't know, China invades Taiwan and everything falls down and the person loses 30-40% of his initial value. So I don't blame him for escaping the stock market, and that's why I like emphasizing a lot on what we call dollar cost averaging. So if you have a lump sum, I don't believe personally in throwing everything in. Why not invest something monthly instead of being all in, you know? And the psychological benefit of that is that if you have, for example, 10,000 euro and you put in 500 a month instead of putting all the 10,000, then you would be buying the stock market at different prices. So if in January the stock market was good, then you buy it at, for example, $400. And if in February it had a bad month, you would buy it for $300. So you smooth out the process by investing monthly instead of all at once. Of course, this does not always apply to everyone, but I find it an easier process to get into the investment world, especially if you're a little bit anxious about it, etc. And of course, it's always important to speak with a qualified financial advisor, of course. But the monthly aspect, I think, is quite beneficial to consider.
I heard on a podcast where it was a money guy. I think it was a money coach as well, and he was saying, like, once you start investing monthly. He also suggested, ideally, do it monthly if you're anxious about it and all that, so you don't feel it. Yeah. You don't feel a massive dent in your savings, etc., as you go along. But he said as well, like, don't look at it once every 6 months, or if you want to just check, because you won't see a big difference over 6 months, but you'll see a big difference over 10 years. You will see because of the miracle of compounding interest, as you put it, because it is super exponential, right? So it keeps on growing on top of itself.
It keeps on growing, yeah.
And people, it's hard to grasp until you see kind of what it looks like. So when I went to do a pension, they showed me, like, how much it would be when I'm 64 in 30 years. God.
Yeah.
that sounds like a very short time, but you know, and it was really, like, encouraging to see that me just investing a very small amount of money every month, how much it would really be as a return when I'm that age, if I'm still alive, you know. You
have to be patient, you know.
It's a time game, I think. It's not about. So what we're talking about here is not about quick, easy money, right? We're talking about how to secure your future for you and your family and your partners or your husbands or wives.
There is no such thing as quick, easy money. I mean...
there is, but most of the time it's either illegal
quite
or risky.
I mean, there was the crypto era. There still is many people. There still are many people interested in crypto, of course, but when I refer to investing, it's always the long-term investing, and that's safer in a way, because when you consider years of history, the past 90 years, you can Google this, the S&P 500 gained between 8 to 10% per year on average. Okay, there were some years, maybe they were minus 20%, but then there was a year plus 30%, plus 40%.
And it tends to rubber band. When it goes really low, it tends to then go a bit higher than usual.
Yes, exactly. So. And 90 years is not a short period at all. There were world wars, the Cold War, the Twin Towers, COVID, everything happened in 8 years, and it still went up. So,
what can get any worse unless we get
Yeah.
nuked?
Yeah.
which is also
It's also a possibility.
It is. Let's just rewind the clock back a bit when you were doing your master's degree in finance. So, were you working during that time as well?
Yes. I was working full time.
Full time, right? So,
Yeah.
what you were doing it in the evenings or weekends?
The master's degree or
Master's, yeah.
Yes. I did it in the evenings mostly,
Yeah.
on a part-time basis. Yeah.
So, how did you keep? So, this is a bit about you, right? So, this is not about
Yeah.
what you do, but how do you keep motivated with something like that, right? So, you're obviously building a career, potentially building a family, and at the same time, you're doing a master's degree, which isn't by no means an easy achievement, obviously
Yeah.
enough, because you need to be focused. So, how did you keep your eye on the ball going through that?
I always believe in everything you do, you have to have a passion for. And that's one of the reasons also why I chose the Masters in Finance and Investing. Because, and I tell this also to my clients when we're doing a Monetize Your Talents session, I believe that if you don't have a passion for what you're doing, you will not be motivated enough to make an impact, not to finish it, because anyone can do a master's degree, even if they don't like it, they can still finish it off, etc. But the question you have to ask is, do I like what I'm doing? Is it my passion? And if it is your passion, then I really believe you will have an opportunity to expand on it. And at the time when I was doing my master's degree, back in when I finished it, it was back in 2017. From 2017 till I can say 2022, I wasn't really utilizing it because I didn't have the opportunity to. Okay, I was doing some trading on the side, etc., but it wasn't really connected to what I did in my master's degree. But then, as I told you, I am a big believer in the law of attraction, and an opportunity came in 2022 when I started this money coaching course. And having a master's degree, of course, it gave me a very good background. And I married, what I learned in that master's degree with money coaching. So there was an opportunity and I realized it was there and I took it. Problem is that many people, they have opportunities and sometimes they don't realize that the opportunity is there. So yeah, it was of course hard to do a full-time job and a master's degree on a part-time basis. But I think the sacrifice I did along those 3 years paid off quite handsomely.
I'm sure it has. I mean, you're doing very well. So sky's the limit at this point because, as you said, if you're getting countless clients right now and you're in a position where you have the clients to work with on your own. You're only going to grow, and I think these days it's not even a luxury anymore. It's about people need to have that financial literacy and understanding of how to save money, and why not invest? I don't know how much you charge, but why not invest 50 euros, 100 euro in a money coach, or slowly do a session to build into it. When you can then save thousands down the line.
Exactly. In fact, when I started this, because this is like everything. When you start a business, you have to know your audience. So which kind of audience are you going to choose? And I really wanted to emphasize on a particular section of society, those between 25 and 45 years old, having a job with a decent income, I don't know, 30, 40,000 upwards, sometimes even 100K. And as I was saying before, these people, although they earn a good salary, most of them, they find it difficult to manage money, or their salary increases, but the end of the month comes and they have no money left to save. And this is quite a common problem, quite a common issue. And these people are asking questions. They're saying, how am I earning 50, 60K a year and I cannot save a dime. How can it be that last year I earned 50k and now I'm earning 65,000 euro a year, but I still cannot save money? Some people even go into credit card debt as well, and they have very good salaries. And these people, they're afraid to speak about it. They feel ashamed, so they're not going to go on Facebook or on social media platform and say, listen, I'm having money problems. And I want it to be that safe space for them.
Almost like a therapist.
Speak. Yeah, you can say that. And most of my clients really appreciated that kind of support. Why? Because no one was there to listen to them, because they were afraid of being judged. And we have a problem in our society that we judge quite easily. It doesn't mean that if you're a successful businessman that you don't have problems with money. It doesn't mean that.
Where does the judging come from, you think, in our society? So we're talking particularly in Malta, I imagine, from that statement.
Malta, but you find it everywhere in reality. But Malta, yes, it's quite a particular issue. Yes.
So where do you think, maybe it's not your area of expertise, but where do you think that judging, the sense to judge very quickly or wanting to judge someone comes from?
Yeah, I think, and
this is that. I'm not expecting a right answer.
I think it starts from a young age, because I when I do sessions with my clients, I always start from their money story, and many tell me that, listen, my parents they hate the business class or the richer people, and when I say why, it's because they think money is the root of all evil, and they're the rich, they're different sect, of society, etc. And
are they, you think?
No, I don't think they are. I think many people who got rich, wealthy, whatever, although many associate their wealth with luck, I think they worked quite hard for it. They took the opportunities presented to them, and of course they made an impact, and I really respect them for that. Of course, maybe they had an element of luck, but I think it was mostly opportunity, and
fortune favors the bold, right? So
exactly. And nowadays, even if you go on the Fortune most 100 influential people, for example, or top 500 business people, whatever, most of them are startups, who started from nothing.
Of course. And risked everything sometimes.
Yeah, so they weren't inherited money. They believed in their abilities and they started their business, whatever, and now they're successful.
And I think the hate comes, this is not just Malta related, but the hate comes from other people and say, no one should have that amount of money. And we look at billionaires and they say, because their net worth is whatever billion. And people don't understand that that's not how much money they have in their bank account. That is based on their business, how much it is, right? It doesn't mean that they're I'm pretty sure they're okay. They don't need to worry about money. But I doubt that, someone would have 100 billion in their day-to-day account, whereas it would be mostly split in assets, etc. And I don't understand how people don't understand that as well, that it is net worth doesn't mean it's just about the money. And there is an inherent hate towards people who are rich and successful. And I wouldn't say I love someone who's rich and successful if I don't know them directly as a person, but I think I probably have the same level of admiration or respect to the fact that they must have really gone through blood, sweat and tears to get through to that. Yeah. And again, no disrespect to the day-to-day worker that has also, goes through blood, sweat and tears to put food on the table and bring money home, etc., etc. But you mentioned a word that constantly there, which is opportunity. And I think it is that those who have more of an eye for opportunity and then take the risk on that opportunity are the people that can tend to then cash out out that risk.
Succeed,
But there are people who have had that eye for opportunity and have taken the risk and then failed miserably and then end up going back into the employment world, right?
Yeah.
Which is just the way of life, I guess. You mentioned credit cards. So I think up until 10 years ago, credit cards weren't a thing in Malta, or maybe they weren't as common. I think we weren't a very debt acquiesce in society.
I think it's mostly the new generation that's
Yes.
coming. So mostly when I say the new generation, some millennials and the Gen Z who are using it.
Are we too
more,
quick
yeah.
to take out lending, you think?
Look, the fact that there were lots of changes in society nowadays with the rise of social media, for example, and the new generation, they do not remember what. Obviously, they did not live in the past. You know, in the past, they experienced certain hardships which the new generation doesn't know about, including myself, of course. And so it's easier for them, for example, to make an impulse purchase. And when you're spending impulsively, what can happen that your money can end up quite quickly, and then there's always your best, in inverted commas, friend, the credit card, to use to buy another thing and another and another. Then the problem is that this uncontrolled spending would lead you to financial hardship.
You spiral out of control.
Yeah. And this is not as widespread as it is in the US. In the US, they have a bigger problem when it comes to credit card debt. But yes, it is becoming an issue gradually.
It's a shame. And even in the UK, they have that problem. So me coming from the banking sector for 13 years, we worked mostly with the UK early on, in the early 2010s, 2015, whatever. And it used to really impact, because I didn't have a credit card back then. Like Malta, again, back then wasn't the Malta we know today. And I say back then, like talking about 50 years ago. But in the last 10 years, we've grown leaps and bounds in terms of society, in terms of financing, etc. I used to get 18, 20-year-olds that had, I'm not joking, 10 grand of credit card debt, which is insane. By the time they're 18, the first thing they would do is open an overdraft and get a credit card so they can go and buy probably bullshit. That's the word for it, because when you're 18 and 20, like, what are you going to take lending for?
Exactly.
You want to do stuff to impress your friends, or to impress a girl, or to impress a boy. You know, that's the only thing you're thinking about at that age, unless you really, have a good head on your shoulders and you're investing in a business.
That's where the lack of financial education comes in.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So,
but we've seen that with the UK, and then obviously the UK underwent a massive overhaul with the FSA in 2012, and then changed to the FCA, which the MFSA copied a lot from the FSA in terms of how we operate here. But they had to really put really strict regulations on banking corporations and credit card and loan companies to make sure that they are giving proper education to their customers before providing with the lendings. And then they had stricter credit checks and all that, right? But it's like, do we have to go through this as a society ourselves as well before we learn our lesson? Do our young people have to suffer and go through that mental health issues? Because imagine you're 22 and you have 30 grand of debt, which you've wasted on probably stupid stuff that you don't really need or want.
Yeah.
Luckily, my parents stopped me from taking any lending before I was 24, 25, and I could do my own stuff. But as a result, when I was 21, I was able to buy my own property because I was able to save and do that, right? So luckily, I had that. But not everyone has that guidance, unfortunately. But yeah, so the question is, do we have to go through that to suffer it again before we can learn our lesson as a generation?
Look, it really depends on what the institutions do about it. Because, I started money coaching, I've had clients. Alone, I cannot reach everyone.
Of course.
Okay, and I really want this to spread. So I really want more money coaches out there, giving out financial literacy classes, whatever, because I think it can be beneficial for everyone to learn more about money. But I did some recommendations because I work closely with some NGOs also. I promoted the fact that, listen, why don't we do something in our schools, for example? Not just in secondary schools, but students in their junior college or university years. Why don't we do some sessions with them to prepare them for life outside university. Because listen, if you are at university, some of them, they don't even work. They are full-time students with the stipend. Then they
most
go out.
people are these.
Yeah, and then they go out
lucky,
in the outside world. They start, okay, they are employed. They start earning a good salary. And next thing would be, shall I buy a home or shall I rent a home? Shall I buy a car? And they don't have pre-guidance about it. So they see their friend buying a car. Let's buy a car like him, or better, so that I look better than him, you know? And buying a car would put him back, I don't know, if it's a new car, nowadays, 20, 30K.
Easily.
Yeah, quite easily.
Where do you get the money from?
Yeah, so already, let's say, 30K in debt. And then maybe you meet someone and you marry, or even if you are on your own, you want to buy your own property. And that's one of the questions they are asking a lot nowadays, even with the rise of property prices. Shall I rent or shall I buy? And the tendency in Malta is, listen, buy a property because it's the best investment you can ever make. But are you going to live forever in Malta, or do you prefer the nomadic life? Maybe you're a kind of person who likes to travel and you don't think that you live in Malta for long. Maybe you would like to work in the UK or somewhere else in Europe. So we would have to consider that. Sometimes we tend to listen a lot to our parents' advice or our friends' advice, etc. But really and truly, we have to make a discovery of ourselves. What do we really want from life? We tend to do the things which others do, but we don't question what we really want. And one of the things I do also in my money coaching, and not just in my money coaching sessions, but also I promote it a lot on my platforms. What I ask, what are your financial goals? And not just your financial goals, but your life goals. Because your goals are different from your friends' goals. It's rare that they are exactly the same. Maybe you want to marry and have children, or maybe you want to live a single life and go work abroad, etc. So it's very important that a person asks himself, herself, what they want to do before making such decisions.
It's interesting you bring this up because, so for example, for me, the long-term plan is probably I don't want to remain this country for the rest of my life. I think, in fact, on Sunday we were with my parents and we were talking about it at the table, and I was like, I'm only here because you guys are still around in the most honest way, because I love them and I want to be around them as much as possible. And I know that if I go abroad, obviously I won't see them as often. And then, the reality of it is that the most likelihood is that we all outlive our parents. Statistically speaking. And I was telling them, like, I'm only still here because you guys are still around, because if it wasn't, I would have moved. But luckily, I was fortunate enough to buy my own property here in Malta. And for me, in the long-term plan, 10, 15, 20 years, 30 years down the line, I don't want to sell the property. I would want to leave it and rent it out. Yeah. Because, let's face it, the mortgage is less than the rent in Malta right now.
Yeah.
By quite a bit.
Yeah.
So if you're lucky enough to own a property and you no longer need that property, you can rent that out. But then there is a question of I need to buy. Whenever you go to another country, then eventually buy a property there as well. And sustaining two mortgages is not easy. It's not impossible, but it's quite difficult. But there are a lot of where am I going with this? There are a lot of advices which say, you should rent, you should always rent, or you should always buy property. But I think you hit the nail on the head, because it depends on who you are as a person, what you need to do. I think financially speaking, there are arguments for and against buying a property.
Yeah, exactly. That's why not every person is the same. Money is quite a subjective subject in itself. And that's why individual sessions with persons are important. Of course, you can read books and make out a generalized, opinion about it. But a person has to always make a self-discovery analysis. So what do I really want out of life? And when he answers that truly and honestly, then you can make your financial plan for the coming 5 years, for the coming 10 years, and for the coming 30 years. I don't know.
You talk about self-discovery, which I think is obviously the key ingredient to a successful coaching session. So I'm glad you mentioned. So coaching is something I am very passionate about. I wouldn't say I'm very passionate about. I'm quite passionate about finance, as you can tell, because obviously I come from that background as well. But coaching is definitely probably the one thing that really attracts me, because there's a psychological aspect of helping someone go through that journey. What are the most common traits you've seen so far in your experience since you've started the Money Coaching Hub? So what are the main points that come out that are very much constants?
Yeah, so I would say the majority, let's say half of my clients, I like to categorize them into archetypes. There are these 8 money archetypes, 8 money personalities. Half of them, they were what we call the fool archetype. So the fool archetype are persons who know how to make money and how to earn money. So maybe they have a decent job, they started a successful business, whatever. But then when it comes to managing that money and maintaining it, they find problems and difficulties. And it's very common to find a person, as I was saying before, earning a good salary, but his money ends up in the 2nd or 3rd week of the month. And then he has to face the final week. Where am I going to get the money from? And usually the answer is credit card debt, or maybe take out of my emergency fund if they have an emergency fund, because most of the time they don't have such a fund. And so I would say this kind of personality is quite common, especially these ages between 25 and 45. And the trick to start improving is not just in the practical sense of making a forecast spending plan and start saving for an emergency fund, etc. I start from the initial phase of breaking it down from a psychological sense. So, if you are this personality of earning lots of money or a decent income but spending it very quickly, where is it coming from? Is it coming from your parents? Did you inherit this trait? Or maybe it's the other way around. Maybe your father was a miser and you're rebelling against that personality by spending everything now. People tend to get affected from past experiences, and they don't realize this. And it's ingrained in their character, and sometimes it's difficult for them to accept that they are this way. But once they realize that they may have inherited this characteristics from their parents or from a person who was influential to them at a young age, once they realize this and accept this, then it becomes easier for them to tackle this challenge, not just from a practical point of view, but also from an emotional, a behavioral point of view.
So essentially you're helping bringing it up to the surface.
Yeah.
First, initially. And on average, how many sessions does it take until this comes up, or until people really discover themselves?
Look, if I like to divide the most comprehensive program I have is 7 sessions. And in 7 sessions, I don't just do the psychology of it, but I also do some sessions on the practical side of money. Now, money coaching is a marathon, not a sprint. But in 7 sessions, you would know what kind of personality you are and how you can work on your challenges and how you can enhance the positives you have in your character, because it's not just about challenges, it's also about your positives as well. Some persons don't realize they have positive characteristics which can help them also eliminate the challenges that they are facing, for example. And I would say half of that program is dedicated to the psychological part of money and your money personality. Then once we, decipher what kind of personality you are and what kind of challenges you have, then we turn to the practical side of it, which is very popular because we would go into the forecast spending plan, for example. What are my biggest expenses, and are they wants or are they needs? And that gets really interesting then, because you discover some persons are spending lots of money in things which really and truly they don't really care about. Because this is about, as Ramit Sethi, a very popular financial coach in the US, likes to say, living your rich life. Because what you like is not what the other person likes. So maybe for me, living my rich life is going out with my family twice a week to eat out. For another person, it may be going abroad on holidays 4 times a year. For another person, it might be, listen, I don't know, spending money to make a nice book collection, for example. Everyone has his or her own idea of a rich life. And that's what a person has to discover to live not just comfortably, but to live the life. Because money coaching is not about sacrificing what you love. That's what many people think when they come to me.
It's like driving. You have to just know what's coming and plan a bit ahead, but it doesn't mean you have to take away from...
Take some planning, of course, but it's not sacrificing what you love the most.
How quickly do people start seeing a difference once they start engaging? And not just specifically with you, obviously. It's great. Let's, shameless plug for Luca, the money coach, but... how quickly do people start seeing a positive change in their financial literacy and well-being?
If they take the comprehensive program, the 7 sessions, which starts from the psychological aspect, I would say by the second, third session, they will start seeing a change in themselves immediately, because they realize what kind of person they are. And it becomes also easy for them to advance to the next part of the program, which is the practical side. So building a forecast spending plan, the budgeting plan, start saving regularly.
Is your forecast spending plan available online? Or is it just...
I like working on an Excel sheet, because many people find it comfortable that way as well. And this sheet is tailorable, because not every person is the same. Some persons have big loans. Other persons, maybe they have other commitments, like maybe they have children. They have to spend a lot on, buying from a pharmacy and buying clothes, etc. Schools. So it's an Excel sheet which has these common sections, and then everyone can add to it.
So any common Joe can set up this type of...
Yeah. I introduce it and work one-to-one with my clients on it, so that it's easy for them to to maintain it, and it's based on how much you're earning and how much you're spending, and the trick is to get your spending not equal to your income, but there's also money left to save and eventually to invest. Some people even just take the practical part of money coaching, so maybe they don't want to go into the psychological aspect, and they just take the forecast spending.
Give me the tools and I will sort it out.
Yeah, there are some people who decide that, and I respect it, because maybe they are okay with their relationship with money. They just want to know some basic tools which would take them a step further. And that is what money coaching is all about. It's not a person constantly with you, spoon feeding. I give you the key for you to open. And that's why many people like it, because they know that once they take it, they can make a difference in their life. There are some people who would like follow-up sessions. I had a client from Ibiza, for example. He took 11 sessions. First, these 7 sessions, and then a session per month, just to keep committed. Not every person is the same. And that's why I said it's not a race. It's a marathon. For a person, 5 sessions might be enough for now. But then they follow up after 2 months, say, listen, can we do another session? Maybe there are some things which need them to be cleared out. So, it's quite subjective, but I would say that most of my clients, all of my clients found it satisfactory, and most of them even provided nice testimonials as well.
What would you say if you had to give common advice? Obviously, you're on the show, and I want to add value to people listening to you right now and kind of show your knowledge and all that. But if you had to give the first 3 steps someone should do, should take, if they feel that they are drowning financially, even though they have good income, like you said, like we mentioned, right? So you have good income, you are, you got a decent job, you're kind of settled already, so you might already have a property and all that, but you still feel you are drowning. You still feel you could be doing better with your money because you're like, how the hell, like, it's payday and I've only got 20 euros left in my account when I'm earning, 3 grand, 2.5 grand, 2 grand. It's still a decent salary these days. What are the first 3 steps that you would, I wouldn't say advise, but you would recommend someone takes before they start really then speaking to a money coach?
Yeah, so the first thing I would suggest is for the person to sit down and start listing all the expenses that he or she has. So this might be overwhelming for the person, but nowadays we have good applications and also cards which keep all our data, where if we go spend groceries, the app would mark it as groceries. If you go to spend from a pharmacy, it would tell you this is health. Once you have a good analysis of where your expenditure is going, then you have a better idea where am I spending the most. So that's the most important trick, because when you have the knowledge and the data where most of your expenditure is going, you know that in that particular section, it could be restaurants, it could be, I don't know, something which you don't have to do, by force. For example, health, you cannot control. So let's say you're earning at 2,000 a month, 3,000 a month salary, and you're spending 600 euro on restaurants, for example. So that's immediately a red light. Why am I spending 600 euro on restaurants? Can I reduce that amount? And then you start analyzing that slowly and doing some groundwork for it. So yeah, you have to see where you are spending the most. That's for sure the first thing. Then, once you identify the sections where you're spending the most, that extra money that you can save, where shall I put it? And if you don't have an emergency fund, that's the first fund where you have to put it in. So create a separate account, not the same account where you do the everyday spending. Create a separate account where to put your money separately.
So I'll give you my example because I'm not scared of talking about it. So I have my emergency fund. I've managed to actually have an emergency fund now, but it is the account in which I get paid. But then my current account, which has the card with it, is empty all the time, and when I need money, I just transfer from it. Is that good practice? Would you advise for me to do that or no?
I would leave it completely separate, and I tell you why. Because an emergency fund has to have a particular target on it. So I would say the basic generalized advice, if you can call it that, is 3 to 6 months worth of your everyday life, worth of your salary. Why? Because if something happens to you and you end up without a job, or you have a health issue and you have to stop working, you have at least 3 to 6 months covered up. For some persons, it might be a year. Maybe persons with a family, they make it even longer. But that has to be your liquid base where you take out money when the need is dire. Okay, so maybe you have an unexpected expense like a health issue, or when COVID came along, for example,
or even maintenance in the house.
Anything, yeah. Maybe your washing machine, and you say, listen, let's take out 800 euro from that account, and then I will replace it immediately. Maybe
I wouldn't spend 800 euro on a washing machine, Luca.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does it speak? It's voice activated.
But it's very important to have, because this liquid amount, and I would say it's the most underestimated account that...
Absolutely.
Yeah, because many people say, but why should I have 15k on the side when I can invest it and earn maybe 6-7% interest on it? But... although I am all in favor of investing because it can grow your account, etc., having that liquid cash base is very important because you don't know what can happen. No one predicted COVID.
And people take their health for granted. It's just general, especially younger people our age. We take our health for granted.
In fact, many people, I receive lots of these questions. They say, listen, is it not better to pay off my debt first and then have an emergency fund afterwards? That's a very common question. And I would say, of course, look at what kind of interest you have on your debt, because if it's a high interest, it would make sense to pay, to dedicate more to it. But still, even if you have high interest, dedicate money to your emergency fund, because if you're putting lots of money on your loan and you have zero in your emergency fund, do you think that the bank will give you back the money you have put on the loan if you have an emergency? So if you end up without a job, how are you going to take care of your children if you have children?
Which is I think which is the benefit of then debt, because a lot of people look at debt like a bad thing, and I think we talked about this in
in
our
a previous conversation.
Where I recently bought a car where I luckily had the liquid enough to buy it cash, but I didn't. I chose not to do that. Why? And people will be like, oh, but you have to pay interest on it. Yeah, but for me, I have money in my account, so if something goes wrong or if I want to do something else, that money is available, and the payment every month, it staggers the hit towards your money pool. So I think it's really important to point that out. Why? Because even my parents will be like, oh, why would you buy a phone on contract, for example, which I don't, which is a bad thing, which I should. Why would you want to buy a phone with monthly payments? It will cost you more in the long run. Yes, but rather than spending, 800, $1,000 or whatever, how much a phone costs, I know because I just bought one. But let's say it costs you 800, 700 euros to buy a phone. You've not just chunked out 700, because then what if something goes wrong? I bought the car, within 3 weeks I had to change the oil. Which is already a cost. But let's say I spent all of my savings on that car, and now there is an extra cost on top of that, which now I don't have that money to tap into, so I have now to tap into my day-to-day incomes. So it's interesting you brought it up, because I think debt has, if you can manipulate debt in the right way, I think it can be a really useful tool.
Yeah, exactly. And the tendency in Malta, it comes from our parents and our grandparents. Listen, debt is a bad thing, pay it off immediately. But what we don't realize is, we're paying debt, we're putting more money in it, but if you don't have this kind of rainy day fund, emergency fund, etc., you're leaving yourself quite vulnerable to whatever can happen. And it happened a few years ago during COVID, it got most people off guard. We had help from government, etc., but still, many people faced hardships. The things happened which we never dreamt that would happen. The hospitality industry was at its knees.
Of course.
Many people lost their jobs for a while. They were without pay. You had pilots spending all those years learning the trade without a job. They couldn't find anything. So it was a year and a half. Many people got into depression as well.
Of course.
And I'm not blaming them at all, because that's where lack of financial knowledge comes in, There isn't enough knowledge why emergency fund is important, why saving for yourself is important. So it's not just about investing for the long run. The first thing that you have to do is build up this emergency fund. So, one, see where you're spending money. Then the money that you can save into the emergency fund. It's very important. It's crucial, I believe. Then, the third aspect, see which money you can save, invest. There are many in the market, bonds, whatever. The investing world is a vast world. But I wouldn't leave out creating a fund. I spoke a lot about it this week. I call it the Happy Money Fund.
So, I read that article. It's very interesting.
So look, creating a financial plan for yourself is not just about emergency fund, saving, investing, that's all important and it has to be done, okay, but leave space for yourself as well. You have the right to spend money on the things you like the most. So create, yes, a fund where you can put in an amount of money each month to spend on the things you love the most. So maybe you're a book collector and you want to buy beautiful books, maybe you're interested in the latest tech products and you want to buy the latest iPhone every year. Everyone has his own, exciting thing,
Vice
vice,
or
yeah.
hobby.
And it's important to keep them. That's why in the beginning I said money coaching is not just about sacrifice. It is about balance. It is about living your rich life, as our friend Ramit Sethi likes to talk about.
I wish he was our friend.
Yeah,
I think
our friend. The word
by proxy. No,
by proxy. But I think it's very important. I don't want to leave the Happy Money Fund as a fourth step, because really and truly it's as important as saving for your future. I don't want people to just save and not live the life,
I agree. I think the worst thing you do is have a lot of money and be 80 years old, not able to actually do anything with it. So I think that's a really good starting point for everyone. And I will definitely sit down and do the expense bit when I get
home. Many people, they say I don't have time to do it. But I say, listen, you're spending time to go out, time at your work, time for everything. And what about your personal finances? I mean, they can be a game if you just sit down and spend some minutes on it, This is not a long process. The first time it will take you some time. But then just sit down every month. I say every month, even with my clients, I emphasize a lot on this. When you budget, put a per month process. Even if you have a license coming next year, start saving for it from before. Okay, so if it's €1,200, take €100 from your paycheck and put it aside for your license, insurance fee, whatever. And that's, once you start doing it, planning becomes much easier. Because then you know that if you have that kind of commitment, if my salary is €3,000 per month, I know that €100 out of it will go to my license and insurance fee. I know that €500 will go to my home loan, for example, etc., etc. Then once you release those commitments, which you cannot get rid of, then you know the exact sum you have to work with.
I heard about the rule of threes. I'm not sure if you ever heard where you split your paycheck into three parts.
The 50-30-20 rule.
And you prioritize the first, obviously you pay off your bills and what you need. The second one is where you then spend, the second one is where you invest, and then the last part is what you use for the Happy Money Fund.
It is, of course, there are many rules. That's one of the most popular. But once again, it's a generic rule, so every person is different. Maybe a person is more well off than others, and maybe he can save and invest more than the other person. So that's why I emphasize a lot. Listen, write down also your goals, your financial goals, because your goals can be different from the other person, and that's why the generic advice, the generic things we read about, it's good because it gives us the knowledge. But it may not necessarily apply personally to us, because our situation can be different from the person next door. And that's why it's important to sit down and write down what you want to do with your life, what your goals are.
So for somebody who is just getting into the job world, so we're talking about the generation after ours, right? What are they called? Gen Z.
The generation.
So Gen Z is now getting into the work world, but they're still starting off, Would you provide them with the same 3 steps to start off?
Generic, yes, in a way, but of course they have different questions to answer. So if for millennials who already have a home, they need to know maybe to control a bit their expenditure, to plan, either to buy a second home or to start investing, etc. Maybe for Gen Z, it is, shall I rent or shall I buy a home? And they have to answer a different question because, property prices have risen up quite a lot.
Do you think the property prices will actually ever go down in this country? Because
It
I'm
doesn't
asking.
seem so. It doesn't seem so. I mean, I'm not an economist, so I cannot really predict the future. But in Malta, I don't know of a time when the property prices have
That's the thing, right? It's been unprecedented where the property prices have gone down. But
you cannot really say.
Yes, I agree.
I don't agree. Having said that, I don't agree on putting all the eggs in one basket.
Yes, no.
So you find many persons say, listen, let's just invest in property, for example, because property in Malta has always gone up. But that's a difficult question to answer because from what I experienced, I never saw property going down in Malta. But once again, you cannot predict the future.
No. The way I see it is, this is completely my opinion. It could be incredibly uneducated and stupid, so call me out on it, please, if you think that's the case. But the way I see it is that, yes, property has gone up and it will keep going up, but will we ever reach a point where people just don't want to live in a boring square apartment that looks like every other apartment everywhere else? Because Malta is losing some of its identity building-wise, I would say. Why? Because we're bringing up... And to be fair to the developers, and this is not about not shitting on them or anything, it's about space. We have to build upwards.
Yeah.
If you have a townhouse that hosts one family, that can be transformed into a block of flats that can host 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 families, the only way is up to build it. You're not going to spread... So we don't have the luxury of room and space like the UK or the US or any other country that is decently sized has. But yes, the question is, will we ever reach a point where we just don't want to live here anymore and we'll just go and then when that happens, what will happen to the vacated buildings?
It's like predicting the future. Nowadays there are many people going abroad to live abroad because they don't want to live in a place which is being built like Malta is being built up, okay? But I think it's really and truly a choice which governments made over the years, built up Malta, attract more business. It brought, of course, more wealth at, I would say, at a cost which many people ask, but was it worth it or not? And that's a very difficult question to answer because, okay, we're living a different life now than we used to live in 2005, from before we entered.
Do you think we're happier now or no?
That's another critical question, because if you go in the sense of happiness in the theoretical sense, I would say maybe the past generation lived a happier life, a simpler life where they didn't have these stresses. But there are persons who would say, listen, I wouldn't imagine myself living in like they used to. I am accustomed to this kind of life now and it suits me. So it's a very subjective question. From what we read, etc., many persons would immediately say, listen, look what they did to the environment and anything else, our social life, etc. And I don't think we're happier. I think we're a sadder society. We're a more anxious society. We're a more depressed society. But other persons would say, listen, this is my kind of life. I don't imagine living like my father used to live, for example, without air condition or without this kind of technological...
Yeah, I think those are not becoming, they are basics these days. In a country like ours, living without AC is hard.
Yeah, so really and truly what we have to answer is, are we taking the things we have for granted as well? There's this author who wrote The Psychology of Money, Morgan Housel, he's called, and recently he also published another book, and he called it Same as Ever. And in one of his podcasts, because I like listening to his podcasts, he said, there was a person, Rockefeller, if I'm not mistaken, who was the richest man in
They
the
still
US in
are
the
one of
past.
the richest families, no?
Yes, but John D. Rockefeller, if I'm not mistaken, his name, he was the richest man in the world, and he said that although he was the richest man in the world, his kind of healthcare was much poorer than our basic healthcare. Why? Because there weren't these technological advancements, so he couldn't take benefit if he had a sickness which nowadays it's common to cure. He didn't have that benefit because there weren't these technological advancements.
Fair.
And that's the issue we have to answer. We tend to complain about the kind of life we're living. We're living.
But I remember my parents complaining, saying, life is not the same as it was when we were
that's
young.
why, and that's why he called the book Same as Ever. So some things never change, some things remain the same. And these things, even when it comes to investing, for example, the same mistakes done 20 years ago are done 20 years after. And there's always the argument that we're living a hurried life more than in the past. In 30 years' time, there will be the same arguments and the same theories,
I think we managed to fit in more these days because of these, if you want to get somewhere, you take an Uber.
Yeah, and
if you want to eat something, you order Bolt or Wolt or Uber Eats or whatever.
Really and truly, I believe, yes, in maybe protesting about how things changed, and because in the past Malta used to be more beautiful, whatever, not just Malta, but this is in general, but we also have to appreciate that you cannot stop technological advancement. You cannot stop this kind of advancement. So we are unfortunate in the sense that Malta is a small island, as you are saying, and if you look at the construction industry, etc., there's only a limit of how much these people can build, okay? But you cannot stop. It's very difficult now to stop this wave. In 200 years ago, when there was the Industrial Revolution and the first factories started being built, there was this sect of society trying to break machines, so that they won't take out their jobs. Now we're facing a similar situation with the rise of AI. Many people are afraid that their jobs will end up. But at the same time, with the rise of technology like AI, etc., new jobs will be created.
Absolutely.
So for persons who are concerned about this, really and truly, what it will take is that you have to adapt now. That's the way forward. You cannot just live in the past and say, look, 10 years ago, if I had this job, I would have earned more. Now my job is becoming insignificant because of AI or because of any technological advancement, whatever.
We're back on the subject of then you need to figure out what opportunities there are with AI.
Yeah, exactly.
It is a very brand new. So, for example, I've been considering it now. AI is a very brand new in the scene. It's not even, how old has it been? AI, ChatGPT over a year
ago, I think.
A year ago or something, it came out. We're on ChatGPT 4 now. It's being released, or it has been. I'm not sure.
5. It will
5 will be released
soon,
short.
Yeah.
Yes. And I was thinking of learning and taking up, understanding the inner workings of AI. I don't know how that works. I mean, I have a very, very, very small background in coding. Pretty sure it's somewhat related. It would be interesting to understand it and become skilled in it, because if you're skilled in something that is very new, imagine if I was, in the mid-2000s, in 2004, 5, 6, when Facebook came out, if I started honing my skills on social media marketing, I would be a millionaire by today.
Yeah. That's why you have to adapt, and people are afraid of changing and of adapting, and that's also a problem which my clients face as well. When I do the session of monetizing your talents, because sometimes they think their talents is just related to the old stuff. Just to give you an example, I had a client. She liked writing fiction.
Okay.
And there's nothing wrong about writing fiction, but she said I can never monetize this talent because Who earns money writing fiction, except if they discover you like J.K. Rowling and you become a billionaire, whatever. And then I said, listen, look at it from another perspective. You like creative writing. Why don't you start writing brand stories? There's a lot of creativity in writing for a brand. And every business will pay good money if you create a good brand. Nowadays, brands are everywhere. And she considered that advice. She started doing it on a part-time basis because her full-time is as a teacher. And now, 5 months later, she's earning a good side income from writing brand stories for corporate companies. And she enjoys what she's doing. She's still writing fiction stories in her free time, but she managed to monetize her talent. And that's the beauty of money coaching, It's not just about learning how to budget, learning how to forecast spending, or even learning about your money personality. It's also about how am I going to earn more money, not just from my current job, but from a passion I have.
I really, really, really like the term monetizing your talents.
Yeah.
It's definitely something I've got stuck with myself, because when you try and put on paper what you're good at, it's hard. I've recently changed careers, and it was very hard at first talking about like, what am I good at? Because, I've managed people, I've managed, operational structures or whatever. I've done a support role. Okay, but what have I really done? And then you start thinking, okay, I've actually done a lot of comms work, so I can write, as you said, brand stories or write a story when you're building a document. And I think in this fast-paced world, we don't really stop and think what our talents are, unless you're like a software developer, where it is a very inherent skill that I'm into code, I know this particular type of code or these particular different types of codes, or I've studied, financial literacy and I'm good at that. That's a skill that you can very much encapsulate. But for someone like me who's not that educated, I mean, I've done my education, not that I haven't, but I didn't pursue, because I don't pursue I've never pursued one particular line of work. I mean, I graduated in IT, went into banking, and now I'm back in IT after 13 and a half years, right? But that's just because how I've always been. I like to jump from one thing to another. So it's really hard to pinpoint it. And for someone like me, and there are many of people that I've met in the world that are like me, which they like to learn new things. So they're in the pursuit of that dopamine hit rather than passionate about one particular topic, which both are excellent things to do. Just as you said, do what you're passionate about. So it's really hard to put it in writing or understanding it, because I think that's the first step probably before monetizing, because first you figure out what are you good at, and then how am I going to translate that into something that actually I can make money on the side.
That's the hardest part that people find, Sometimes they realize what I'm good at. They know that I'm good at writing, I'm good at painting, whatever. I'm good with people. Every talent is important, but then the question is, how am I going to turn this into a side hustle, into a part-time job? They just they don't realize the opportunities that are out there, and maybe sometimes research isn't enough as well. They need another person to push them and to give them that support to start it out. Sometimes it's procrastination. That's a big problem, or the famous self-imposter syndrome. They don't think they are good enough, and they are afraid of taking the plunge, and this keeps many people back from trying new things, and
interesting you mentioned that. So I've been before I started doing the podcast, I was thinking about it for a good 2 years, not gonna lie, because I've always been a fan of self-development and listening to people speak, and listening to experts like yourself coming on a show and talking, and I was like, the host doesn't really need to be an expert, he just needs to know how to ask the right questions, right? Which I'm learning, but through all the coaching and all the coaching exercises and accreditations I did in my old job, I'm pretty good at now figuring out the questions. And I remember sitting with Larry trying to plan, and we figured out that there were so many things that could go wrong, and I remember telling Larry, fuck it, let's just go episode 1. I don't care if we film it in my living room, but let's just do it.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way. Like, we're not going to get thousands of views at one go. We still don't get
course.
thousands of views now.
Mhm.
We're getting better, which is great. Our reach is improving. We're gaining a bit of traction, which isn't really the aim for me. The aim is to help myself. It's a kind of a vlog.
Exactly.
And help people like you as well. Talk about it, really kind of articulate what's going through your head and what your plans are, and how we can help people watching as well, and inspire someone that
Yeah.
maybe is sitting on their laptop right now, or on their phone, or during their walk, and thinking about, I wish I could start doing that. Like, the aim
Yeah.
is just go for it. Start it. Once you have enough, there's time for thinking, and then there's time for action, right?
Yeah.
With yourself, once you seem like you have that good momentum going now, but you had to start from somewhere.
Of course. And the start is always the most difficult part. Why? Because when you start, the initial phase is very difficult, because maybe, especially if it's something new, maybe there are a few people believing in what you do, and maybe some people will take a laugh out of it, but if you are focused on your goal, and if you truly believe you're doing something great, nothing will stop you. No amount of opposition or obstacles can stop you. And when I started this out, I really believed in, spreading financial literacy, in money coaching, etc. And that it didn't exist in Malta, except, of course, financial literacy pushed by some institutions like Gemma, for example, etc. But no one was pushing financial literacy and the money coaching aspect. There were companies pushing invest in this or buy this product, etc. The usual stuff. But no one was pushing, listen, build an emergency fund. What is your money personality? This kind of questions, which are very personal and which many people started relating to. And after a few weeks, I started receiving lots of interest from, not just from clients, but also from local media, and also media from the UK. I was present at a podcast with a UK person as well, 2 actually UK persons, and all of this then turned me into a different person. I wasn't the kind of person to go on a podcast and speak, I didn't know if I was good or not in it. And then all of a sudden, in a few months, I was on 3 TV programs. I think this is my 4th or 5th podcast. Now I am at a stage I don't remember. So
That's it. That's good. It's a good stage to be.
It's a
Well
good
done,
sign.
huh? That's really
And thank you. And the beginning was hard. And how to say, there were, yes, some people who laughed about it and who made bad jokes about it, And I used to go around and say, there's that person who thinks maybe he's a money coach, etc. But and this can happen to anyone, not just to myself.
I've had the same experience myself.
But my character is, I believe in what I'm doing. I'm doing something good for other people. And when I started having some clients and they started saying, thank you, you changed my life because you changed the way I do my personal finances. Or thank you because now I started saving for an emergency fund. You know that you did a difference to that person's life. And sometimes I have couples, for example, and there's lots of tension about their money issues.
It's the number one reason for, top reason for divorce.
Number 2. And they are fighting, there's lots of tension. But when they come to meet me in such coaching sessions, and they start looking at their finances, looking at their personality, and you realize that you're making a change in a couple's life, maybe even saving that relationship, I get lots of satisfaction from that. It's
for sure.
It's really and truly, it's not just about the money, because if it was just about the money, I would have done something else and maybe earned more money. What I did is different. I was more passionate about it because there's more personal connection with the client, and I knew that the first few weeks, few months, and even the first year, I wouldn't earn lots of money. And I'm not saying I'm a millionaire now, or it's nothing of the sort. In fact, the prices I put on my coaching is quite competitive, especially when compared internationally. But the aim wasn't to make a big profit. The aim was to help, to spread financial literacy. And now I am glad to say that I started this concept of money coaching and financial well-being in Malta, and there are other people as well who were encouraged by what I did maybe and have started their own thing as well. And I'm very glad about it, because it means that financial literacy will continue to spread, and together we will continue making a good impact on people's lives.
It truly is a vocation to do that, as you said, right? Because it's you can make a living from it, which is great, but you could have pursued other things that would give you more money. It's the same. I mean, for me, for example, I can relate, because when we started, you hear some comments from some people, but then you also have people that haven't spoken to you in a long time, and they message you like that, like, I really found this particular episode interesting, or I learned this, I didn't know. I didn't know who Luca was, for example, and it sent me on a spiral to chase my... And that for me is enough. If it hits one person, it's enough. That's one more person than I had.
That's the satisfaction you get. So it's not just about the money. It's about getting that satisfaction and living a life without regrets. And then, of course, if the opportunity comes to enlarge in what you're doing, then why not?
Yes, if there's money with it, I wouldn't say no.
Of course. But the first objective was to spread financial literacy, because I always ask this question: why it's not taught in schools? Why there is this lack? And
is it true? There's this conspiracy that schools don't teach it because they want people to be workers and not everyone being an entrepreneur. Do you think that there is some truth in it?
Look, there are many conspiracy theories. Really and truly, one of the reasons is for sure that financial literacy is quite a difficult subject to teach to a classroom. Why? Because as I was saying, not every person is coming from the same background. So you cannot if you have a student who have a hard life, his family maybe his family is not middle class, it's a low income family. You cannot teach him this. You can teach him the same things as the other person, but they may not apply immediately to him. So maybe for him, the first thing that he has to change maybe is to find a job which earns him more salary in the future. But for another student, maybe his parents are business people and he knows that he's going to inherit that business. So for him, he knows that he has his future laid out for him. So, different characters calls for sometimes more individual education. And that's maybe a hard thing to do.
It's funny you mention it, because I know a lot of people that I have family members that their parents were business owners and entrepreneurs, and I have friends that their parents were business owners and entrepreneurs, and I've seen a mix that some people, yes, they inherit and they keep doing the same work, but all of them, or the majority of them, end up being self-employed.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like they don't know, they've not, and vice versa on the other side of the aisle, like you said, because you've always had an experience of a working class family where people who are employees rather than fending for themselves within the business world. So this is my observation, but is there a generational jail in that sense of keeping you within the confines of what your parents did?
Parents tend to expect, if parents have a good business, maybe their biggest wish is that if not all of their children, maybe at least someone will continue their legacy, so yeah, that's quite common. But yes, I met lots of people whose father was, I don't know, had a business as an accountant or as a doctor, whatever, and the person doesn't like that subject and he wants to change. So that's normal, and maybe he has to go through a lot of conflict with his parents to do it. I mean, that's quite common. But at the end of the day, I believe, listen, follow your passion, okay? And it's also common that your passion changes as well. In the US, it's common to change your career, not your job, your career 4 times until you retire. So what am I saying? Nowadays, the way the world has developed, it is common to be an architect for 10 years and maybe then you want to follow being a copywriter in the next 10 years. There's nothing to be ashamed of it, you know, as long as you're following your passions and you're happy about it, then go ahead.
It's something I never understood, that I see a lot of people, including some of my friends as well, that stay in the same line of work.
It can be the most comfortable thing to do as well.
For me, it's always been a foreign thing. Like, for example, even in 13 years of working for a bank, I did 9 different jobs, completely different, yes, most of them were banking related at first, but a lot of them at the end, towards the end, were more people related or operational related or, logistic related or risk related, things which are transferable skills into other sectors, which found it very easy then to move into the technology sector, for example, for me. With learning. But you'll find that some people just, I'm really good at being a customer service agent on the phone, so I'm just going to stay on there and just get my bonus at the end of the year and happy day. Like, for me, I respect it, that there's nothing wrong with doing so, but it's always been a foreign thought. So I think that the individuality of it is definitely ringing for me through this conversation.
Look, the comfort that a person feels when he's in a comfortable job, it can be advantageous because you say, listen, I have this stability, I have a family, and I don't like taking risks and going on another job, especially when my children are young, and I respect that position. But we have to be careful and ask ourselves, are we happy doing what we're doing? Because life is too short to live in an unhappy job. Our jobs, they take most hours of the day. We work at our jobs 8 to 10 hours nowadays per day. We tend to see our boss more than we see our children, our wife, whatever. So it might be okay, yes, to stay in the same job and live comfortably because that gives you peace of mind, whatever. But it's good to sometimes ask that question, am I happy doing what I'm doing? And also, if you have children and your daughter and your son comes to you and asks you, Dad, is it okay to follow my dreams? What kind of answer are you going to give her? If you're in a comfortable job, but it's a job which you are not happy doing. So this now comes to what kind of legacy do I want to leave to my children, And if I tell her, listen, you cannot follow your dreams because it's not practical to do so, then you are not like exposing your children to a limitless world, So you have to consider that as well. Not just yourself, but what kind of example you said.
I think it's a double-edged sword, right, this conversation, because you absolutely make sure you're happy doing what you're doing. But sometimes you go through tough times within a role. I had this conversation with my boss last week where I told him, this job, it's great, but it's not always great. It's sometimes very, very stressful, and I don't think my heart will be in it for a very long period of time. And the response was, let's find something that makes you happy, right? Because I constantly ask myself that question. But also, with that, the response was not just, let's find something that makes you happy, but, you have to stick it in there for a while and understand why you're not happy as well. Because for me, I've just started this role. It's hard.
Yes.
It's hard because you're learning. It's hard because it's high pressure. It's not a straightforward role, which is I would never ask for a straightforward role because I would get very quickly very bored and I would probably leave for that. So sometimes there are some realities of, yes, follow your dreams, but then don't follow them blindly
Of course,
not knowing where you are. I think you need to
you
appreciate.
have to make a plan. That's
Yes,
why
yes.
it brings us back to making a financial plan for yourself.
Yes.
Maybe it can be a time where it's not ideal to change jobs. Maybe your children are still young and you want to save up a little bit of it.
That's it.
And in fact, in my forecast spending plan, I emphasize a lot also on the opportunity fund, I call it. So if you can manage to save an amount of money towards a dream that you have, maybe you want to go self-employed full-time in a passion that you have, or maybe you want to start your own business and you want to make sure that you have 2 to 3 years, I don't know, the safe haven, you have that liquid cash, so that if something happens and your dream doesn't work out,
you can go.
you have
survive.
that cash amount to take care of you those 2 years, 3 years, whatever. And then if it doesn't succeed, you go back to your full-time employment. That's a very practical thing to do, but at least you tried. The worst thing is if you don't try, because then you will be 60, 70, 80 years old, whatever, and you say, I was there, I had that opportunity, and I didn't take it because I was afraid of trying. And this fear, is keeping lots of people back from their dreams. It's okay to fail. It's okay to fail. Especially if you saved for it, if you planned for it. Okay? And if you have that financial backup, it will make it easier for you to face it then.
We see a lot of motivation, just go for it, give it 100%, and that's absolutely good advice. But also, I think for people like us that have, families and all that to take care of, you need to. The risk is not just weighted by you. The risk is weighted by your families, by your children, and etc., etc. So obviously, the younger you are, the more risks you can take. I would say to anyone who is in their early 20s, just go for it. Yeah. Learn as much as you can, fail as much as you can in your 20s, before you start making financial commitments. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't have any regrets personally myself. I'm not saying this because I do, because I have gained so much knowledge by, again, looking for the right opportunities as well. So it's not just about being self-employed or working, but even if you are working for a job or if you are self-employed, if you are not learning and you're sticking to what works, or what has worked for you in the past, you're gonna struggle.
Yeah.
It's like when you've grown a business from A to B, B2C is completely gonna be completely different, right? If you've done a role for 5-6 years and you're really good at it, and you move to a new role, you can't do the same thing. One, you're managing different people, it could be a different company, so different culture, different operational levers or logistical difficulties. So absolutely. So I agree with you. I think that being open to fail and planning to fail as well, like having that contingency is important.
Yeah. You don't find this a lot in a lot of books, this opportunity fund which I mentioned, because what they tend to tell you, the generic advice or so, is listen, just go for it, take the risk. If you fail, no worries, you fail. But I, especially as a money coach, I like to look at the financial aspect behind it. And I'm okay with taking calculated risks. So, for example, if you're earning 50k a year and you know that you need that amount to live by, why don't you save at least, if 100k is a lot for you, why don't you save at least 1 year salary, so that you give yourself a year to try out what you're most passionate about. And maybe after 1 year, you do a lot of progress that you know that the second year will be better and you're going to earn that amount. So, yes, for persons interested in taking the plunge, to make it, to increase the chance of success, why not start saving for that dream that you have? So, this is another aspect then of saving, not just saving for an emergency, not just investing or happy money fund, but also, why not the opportunity fund can be an important aspect to your life.
Jumping on another version of that as well, where you could be working your full-time job and doing, like I'm doing, doing something at night or in the evenings, or you work through it over the weekends, which is a side hustle. When would be the right time then to shift from your full-time job to then take the plunge and go into your switch it pretty much? You'll take that full-time and then do something part-time, for example.
So there are people who, when I said the opportunity fund, for example, they may be doing their full-time thing and their passion on a part-time basis. In that case, they can be gaining that experience, whilst they're part-time, building connections, etc., which will make their transition to full-time then much easier than if they're just working full-time and then they turn full-time to another different thing, and building from primitively. So if you're part-time, you then have a better chance to save to go full-time. Why? Because you can use the revenue you're getting from your part-time towards that goal. So when you take it is a kind of question, not just from a financial point of view, but also how many connections you have now to take that plunge. And the first months or years can be difficult to do so, especially if you have a family. But once you have your financial base settled, so you have 1 to 2 years, I don't know, worth of money to cover you, just in case something happens to your passion project, then it might be a good time to take the plunge. But you have to see the financial aspect, how many connections, how much you have advanced in your business, and also, especially if you are in a relationship or if you have a family, etc., you have also to consider their opinion about it. Why? Because taking your part-time to full-time may entail longer hours until you succeed. We know it's not easy to maintain a business full-time nowadays. So if it is a business, you have these 3 factors to consider. If it is changing jobs, so maybe you are, I don't know, a full-time accountant and part-time you're doing content writing, for example, and what you're aiming for is just changing career, you might take a financial hit. Maybe as an accountant you're earning 40k, and as a content writer you will start with 25k. Okay? So there's that financial difference, but you're earning salary on a constant basis. So in that case, the risk is lower because you just changed your employer, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're doing it as a business, then there's that element of risk which has to be considered as well.
Absolutely,
and
I think so too.
In those cases as well, it's not just going to an accountant and doing some financial planning, etc., but it may also be a good idea to start looking at your personal finances as well, and why not go to a mentor and ask him questions about it. Nowadays we live in the knowledge era, so there's a solution for everything.
It's true.
It's not like in the past you wanted to do something and it's all trial and
you have to go to the library, find the book if there is
nowadays, one. Even just going on the internet and searching, I don't know, YouTube videos, anything.
Mm-hmm.
There's a solution for everything, I think.
Let's talk about the Money Coaching Hub. So let's talk about a bit now your brand and what you're doing. So why is it called the Money Coaching Hub? Why is it the hub?
Yeah, so the hub is quite an interesting word. The hub is because it's like a community I am creating. This is not just money coaching on an individual basis, etc. What I want to create is a community of like-minded individuals, like-minded to say. My dream is that in this community there will be people talking about their money issues, where money is not a taboo anymore. So if, for example, a person today has met up with a difficulty saving his monthly allocation to an emergency fund, he goes in this hub and says, listen, I'm having difficulty doing this because of this and this. And maybe another person, even if it is from another country, he say, listen, I faced that issue as well. And you know what I did? I did this and this. And person A would feel encouraged because another person was facing the same issues and he did it. So this is a community I want to create. I started it out, of course, money coaching individually, and now I'm also into financial well-being with...
You do talks for companies as well, no?
Yes. I started financial well-being in Malta last May, and I am regularly doing financial well-being workshops with companies where we cover the aspect of money management, money and mental well-being as well. And in the coming year, I already have many agreements with not just with companies but also with organizations who are into the well-being aspect when it comes to their employees, because in a company, well-being is very important, but not just the psychological sense, but also in the financial well-being aspect. And outside Malta, this is a big thing. So bringing us back to the question which you asked, the Money Coaching Hub, this community of like-minded individuals. When I say like-minded, it's because everyone is really and truly experiencing money issues on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
So I have many ideas of creating this community where it's a safe environment where everyone can speak about his money issues without fear, without fear of being judged. And this will eliminate then the money shame that they feel. And I want to enlarge in this not just in Malta, but also internationally, starting from Europe first. Why Europe? Because in the US there are already many communities and it's more widespread. But Europe, it's still in its primitive state. There's lots of opportunities there, and I have many ideas on how to make this a common feature for everyone, not just from a money coaching perspective, but also maybe providing individuals with something technological, for example, where they can see the latest financial news which relates to them personally, where they can do some budgeting and when they can learn as well.
That's cool.
And I think there's lots of potential for it. It is quite at a primitive stage in the sense that there's nothing like it in Malta and to a certain extent in Europe as well, because when we mention coaching in Europe, it's more business coaching, executive coaching, etc. But when it comes to financial well-being, Europe as a whole is still a little bit backwards. And this will for sure change in the coming 5 years. I really believe this, and I will not be the only person moving this forward. There will be other persons, and I am glad about that, because Europe and the world as a whole needs more persons spreading financial literacy. This is about the common good, not just personal profit, etc. So that's why I said Money Coaching Hub and not just Money Coaching by Luca, for example, or any other.
So the hub is an important word for the community.
Yes.
And you mentioned community in your opener as well.
Yeah, but it doesn't necessarily have to be the hub. It can be anything which there's that community feeling around it. So this is my vision, of creating this thing which is accessible to everyone, especially that niche which I mentioned, 25 to 45, earning a good salary, or maybe they are business people and they are very successful. And I think that these people, they suffer silently, they are the silent sufferers of our society, because governments tend to focus on the low income people first. There's nothing wrong about that, but let's not forget people earning a decent income, or even
and they feel squeezed.
And yes, they feel challenged, but they don't have the necessary help, not just from the government, but from institutions around us. And I want to change that. I want to break this chain, okay? And I want these silent sufferers to feel more comfortable in their relationship with money and to take the next step forward in their lives.
And I can see you're very passionate about it. You get me
Yeah.
excited. You get me excited talking about it, which means that you have. You're definitely super passionate about it. I think we can wrap up, but I have two questions for you. Question number one is what have we not talked about that you'd like to bring to the surface? Have we missed anything that you really want to showcase on this conversation?
Yeah, one of the things was this thing about the silent sufferers, but we have just mentioned it, and I was so passionate about it because I see many people suffering, and sometimes they don't know it's because of this, it's because of the fear of talking about it. So I think we have covered that quite well. Financial well-being we mentioned briefly. But as I said, I think it's something which is going to grow. And I think every company in Malta, which has the employees at close to its heart, will one day have to invest in it. Why? Because, look, we know how mental well-being was such a taboo in the past. And we know now it's quite common to go working for a company and they have these, benefits of seminars and mental well-being week and whatnot, and sometimes giving incentives, for persons if they need to go to a psychologist, to go to a psychotherapist, whatever. Financial well-being is the next big thing. Okay, the cost of living is, we know what it is. Inflation is it's not going to go down anytime soon. And many people will face difficulties which they have not faced before. So our personal finances will be one of the most important aspects that companies will face. In fact, a recent study by one of the big four accountancy firms showed that 60% of people are stressed out when it comes to their lives because of personal finances, because their personal finances are not in order. They don't have good relationship with their money issues. And this stress affects them in their everyday work life. And it is in the employer's interest to tackle that. Because if you have an unhappy person at a job, even if it's because of his personal finances, it's in the employer's interest to help that person, so that whilst he's working with your company, he's more serene. If his personal life is serene and the employer has participated in taking steps towards that issue, then the employer would feel more gratitude towards the employer. And yes, I think that's quite an important aspect, financial well-being, which I introduced in last May and which will for sure grow. Not just through me, but also through other persons.
If I'm listening to this podcast, where can I find you, Luca? This is your chance to plug the Money Coach Hub.
Yeah, so I have a website, of course. It's www.moneycoachinghub.com. So, and then I am quite active on my LinkedIn profile. I'm active on all social media platforms, but my LinkedIn I am very passionate about because, LinkedIn, you have that niche that between 25 to 45 professionals, entrepreneurs, they are all present on LinkedIn mostly. So,
and you post a lot of interesting stuff.
I like to post on a daily basis. I mean, even videos now. I'm doing shorts as well because I believe that.
Are you doing TikTok dances, Luca?
Not yet. Not yet.
You're getting into it.
I created my TikTok account, I think, last month or 2 months ago, because if you want to be present everywhere, you have to.
You have to.
So, but the main things is the website of the Money Coaching Hub, my LinkedIn profile, and of course my personal business email is info@moneycoachinghub.com.
We'll put everything in our description for the show.
And also for people who would like to try it out, money coaching without actually maybe contacting me. On my website there is a quiz. It's a money type quiz where they can fill out the words which relate most to their everyday, characteristics around money, and then they will have the result of what kind of money type they are.
That's interesting. I'll give it a shot. I'm probably a fool. I'm probably a fool for sure. Like, 'cause
Yeah, who
when you were
knows? Who
describing the
knows?
fool, I was like, "Yep,
Yeah.
that's me."
Who knows?
Pardon? Yes.
Yeah.
So after the show is ending, I'm gonna take the quiz, and then Lily right now is gonna put the quiz in 3,
Yeah.
2,
You
1.
can-
Cool. One last thing before we close and wrap up. It's been super captivating listening to you, and that's why it's taken 2 hours. But
Thank you.
you obviously know your stuff. It is a very interesting topic. I think it's a very valid topic, and as you said, it's a very important topic as well. So, keep up the good work. I'm sure you have a
Thank
great
you.
path ahead of you. And we hope to be part of that path as well, in any way we can. But one last thing before you leave is, and I always ask this to the guests, is if you had to leave one message for the whole world to listen to, what would it be?
Yeah. So I am going to go back to the subject of money shame, and I will say, listen, don't be afraid to talk about your hardships. Okay, talking about it will make you feel better, especially if you talk about it to a person who listens. Nowadays, in our world, we do lots of talking, but we don't listen, and it's very important to listen. Okay, so from a person facing that hardship, find the courage to talk. Nowadays, we have many avenues where you can talk. In the case of money coaching, there are money coaches, etc. And to the person on the other side, try to listen and really listen, because sometimes just listening will have helped the person tenfold over. So that's quite important to break the taboo around money, and also to help the silent sufferers in our world.
Very good. Luca, thank you for coming on. It's been really
you for
interesting,
inviting me.
genuinely. Really, really awesome work you've been doing, and it's obvious that you're passionate about it.
Thank
It's obvious that you care about this vocation, because that's what I'm going to call it, vocation, because absolutely it is something that you need to want to care about, and how you impact the community. It's been super valuable for myself personally listening to you. I'm definitely going to take those 3
Thank you.
steps and start
Yeah.
off, and you might get a phone call from me.
Why
When you
not?
come nowadays.
Yeah.
But no, thank you for being on. It's a pleasure.
Thank you for inviting me.
We'll hope to see you again in the future.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.